Happy Pride and welcome to Teen Book Bites. I'm Oscar from the Will and Ariel Durant branch in Hollywood, and I'll be your host today. Librarians from across the LA Public Library will be sharing some of their LGBT plus book picks. All of the books that you will hear about today will be available either as ebooks or in print. And I'm especially excited to let you know that all of our branches are open, so you can come in and check out these and many other titles. So how did Pride start? I actually did a little research into this because I didn't know. The first Pride Month was celebrated in 1970 to commemorate the first year anniversary of the Stonewall riots, when LGBT plus citizens took a stand against violence police raids at gay establishments. The raids often sought to arrest individuals for activities such as wearing gender inappropriate clothing or because bars sold alcohol to them, both of which were illegal at the time. In fact, today, June 28th, marks the 42nd anniversary of the beginning of these events and is known as Stonewall Day. All right, enough history and onto the books. Our first presenter is Emily.
Hey, hello. So my first book that I'm going to be recommending today is Genderqueer. You can see that on the screen. That way, by Maya Kobabe. So Genderqueer is a graphic novel memoir of the author Maya, who recounts her struggles over her life with gender identity. And as a side note, Maya uses the gender neutral air pronouns. So Maya, who is born female, grows up to realize it doesn't identify as either male or female, but somewhere in between. And the memoir is a story of self-discovery and an exploration of what gender means, and is just full of like beautiful imagery. I want to share one. This is like the one image that a lot of people share as one of their favorites, and it's this. And I remember when I first read this book and I came across this page and I like audibly gasped. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. And it says, in high school, I began to theorize that I had been born with two half souls, one female and one male. And so it's just beautiful. That's just one of the many beautiful images in this book. I love it. So I recently I watched an author talk with Maya that the South Pasadena Library had, and Maya said that Genderqueer actually started out as an informative webcomic to let her friends know about her being non-binary, so Maya didn't have to like awkwardly tell her friends in person. And so Maya also described the coloring process for the work because the webcomic was originally uncolored, and said that I didn't want to use like pink versus blue on the top and bottom or anything or throughout the work because it doesn't really identify as either male or female or transgender, and therefore it uses more neutral colors. So overall, Genderqueer is such a beautiful graphic novel that is not only like informative, but personal, funny, emotional, and just really rich, and I highly recommend it.
Thanks, Emily. Would you say it's a quick read, or is there a lot of stuff to go through with reading?
It's pretty quick because but you can get lost in the images. Like you can get lost in how beautiful it is, but it can go pretty quick because it's a lot of like separate little chunks of like Maya's life that read really quickly. So, but it is beautiful. So
yes, yeah. I actually would like a poster of the first pick you showed for the branch. Yeah, it's definitely important to include non-binary folks.
Yes.
All right, thanks, Emily. So our next presenter is Kelly.
Yay! Hi, everybody. Happy Pride Month. So I am recommending Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. Cemetery Boys follows the story of a gay transgender brujo named Yadriel who wants nothing but to be accepted by his long line of family bruex, who have powers gifted to them by Lady Death. The men's powers are kind of allowed them to be spirit guides, and they're able to sever the ties that keep someone a ghost on this plane and release them into the afterlife. And the women's powers are for healing. So to obtain these powers, Yadriel must go through a sacred ceremony, but the community denies him this rite of passage because he is transgender. When he senses that his cousin Miguel has died suddenly and no one can locate him, Yadriel sees it as an opportunity to prove to everyone he's a true brujo by solving the mystery and releasing his cousin's spirit. His plan quickly falls apart as he accidentally summons the spirit of Julian Diaz, a boy with unfinished business who also mysteriously died the same day as Miguel. They agree to help each other out and thus starts their journey together as they try and solve why the deaths and everything else. So this is a love story. So on top of the mystery and the Latinx traditions and everything, it's also a swoon read for the teens. But it's just such a great book. The plot is captivating, it's entertaining, it's contemporary, it combines high fantasy with Latinx tradition, and it's set in East Los Angeles in like today's times. But it also covers like multiple Latinx identities, Mexican, Colombian, Cuban, and it has some great LGBTQ plus characters. Not only just Yadriel, there's other characters in the book as well. It handles heavy subjects of dead naming, transphobia, gang violence, death, and loneliness very well. It's done with great care and thoughtfulness. And this book touches on a lot of day-to-day issues that cisgender people would never be aware of what the character Yadriel is going through. So it's a very enlightening read, and I highly suggest it to everyone. I should also say the author is also transgender and Latinx, and they just did such a great job on this book. I just love the characters. I love the setting. Yadriel's family home is in a cemetery. Like their whole thing is with this cemetery in East LA. I don't know about anybody else. I love cemeteries, so it's so good. And then the plot also counts down to Dia de Muertos. So this makes for a fantastic read in late October. So coming up, get your holds now on this book. Yeah, so I highly suggest it. I hope you guys read it and love it as much as I do.
Thanks so much for sharing. I actually didn't hear much about this book, and you sold me when you said East LA, because one of my favorite authors is Adam Silvera, and he writes a lot about New York. Mm-hmm. So to have a West Coast counterpart that combines fantasy and the Latinx experience.
Right. It's fun to, it's like, you're like, oh, I know where this is. Oh, I know where they're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. When I read Little Lion, I felt that way quite a bit.
Yes.
So thanks very much. All right. So our next presenter is Zeba. Hey, Zeba.
Hi, Oscar. Thank you. I'm going to talk about this book, In Music from Another World by Robin Talley, published in 2020. Two teen California pen pals develop a more than friendship. This historical fiction novel is set in the summer of 1977. One of the teens, Sharon, is writing from free-spirited San Francisco, and the other teen, Tammy, is writing from conservative Orange County. They both look up to Harvey Milk as an admired gay civil rights activist of the time. We are painted a picture of two very different upbringings and regions of California coming together to fight for LGBTQIA plus civil rights. Robin Talley takes us back to a time when the punk scene was thriving and political rallies in California created positive change so that we may be free to love whomever we choose.
Thanks so much, Zeba. What did you like most about this book?
Well, personally, I'm a huge music nerd, and I really liked how they described the punk scene in San Francisco in the 70s. And they were talking about going to Dead Kennedy's shows at all age venues. So it was really cool to think about being a teen at that time in San Francisco and being and discovering the Dead Kennedys in a punk venue.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so our next presenter is Lear. Hey, Lear.
Hello. Thank you. Happy Pride Month, everyone. I wanted to share with you one of my favorite reads of the year so far. There it is. Melinda Lowe's newest book, Last Night at the Telegraph Club. This is an excellently researched historical fiction set in San Francisco in 1954, when Chinese Americans and immigrants had to live under increased paranoia, racism, and suspicion from both the government and their neighbors regarding communist sympathies. Lily, our main character, loves space exploration and is getting more and more interested in discovering what's outside of her Chinatown home. Her parents have warned her not to leave their immediate neighborhood, but Lily ventures forth to various places, one being the Telegraph Club, a lesbian bar. This is where she slowly discovers herself. That and her new relationship with her first white friend, Kathleen, that slowly becomes more, may end Lily up in dangerous situations with more than she bargained for. Dealing with McCarthyism, microaggressions, and a first real relationship, you'll devour this book in a sitting. I know I did. I felt immersed in the world and with the characters, read Lowe's first historical fiction while also enjoying her past science fiction and fantasy novels. Thanks.
Thanks, Lear. I think it's a nice compliment to The Coldest Enemy by George Takei. So it's good to see what happens later, and that racism against Asians was still an issue in the 50s.
Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful book. Highly recommend.
Great. All right, so next we have Edwin. Hey, Edwin.
Hi, I actually wanted to recommend the book. It's a graphic novel. It's called Heartstopper. And I actually came across this book as a webcomic, actually. So for those of you that know about Webtoon, that's how I basically found out about it. But it's also in Tapas. And both of those platforms are basically, places where artists and authors go to place their comics and their strips. And so this was then serialized and turned into a graphic novel for the enjoyment of all of us that love it in a physical format. So I definitely recommend it. It's written by Alice Osman, and it's about a shy and soft-hearted Charlie Spring who sits next to rugby player Nick Nelson in class one morning. A warm and intimate friendship follows, and that soon develops into something more for Charlie, who doesn't think that he has a chance. But he doesn't know that Nick is actually struggling with his feelings of his own as well. And as the two of them grow closer and take on the ups and downs of high school, they come to understand the surprising and delightful ways in which love works. So this was a beautiful, beautiful illustrated book. It's mainly all in like a teal color. And I don't know that you can see it very well here, but the illustrations are beautiful. And what I love most about this book is just the relationship and how their friendship develops and how their love starts turning into something more, right? So definitely recommend it for middle grade and up. It's super quick read, and you can continue reading it in any of those platforms, or also requested from our e-media provider, Overdrive, or just check it out at our library.
Thanks, Edwin. I actually had a question for you about this book. When I was looking up on Goodreads earlier, I noticed that it had several volumes. And so do you know if it's like all of those combined into the book that you have?
Yeah, so this is actually the first volume. There are actually 3 volumes out right now, and the webcomic is still ongoing. So there will be definitely more volumes to come once they serialize the rest of it. But it hasn't finished yet. So if you basically finish all 3 volumes and you want to continue reading, you can follow up. I think they do weekly or monthly updates on it.
The story continues.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, Edwin. So the next presenter is Vinci.
Hey there. Thanks for bringing me in. So I want to talk about Heavy Vinyl. There we go. This is such a cool book. It's a graphic novel, a comic, and I absolutely love it. It is set in 1998, and you have Chris, who just got her dream job at a record shop, Vinyl Mayhem, and she's ready for anything from music snobs, just mean customers, everything, even the workplace crush she's got. And then at one point, the singer that they all love goes missing, and that's when Chris finds out that it's not just a record shop. The employees also moonlight as teen vigilantes in a sort of like cool girl fight club, Scooby-Doo sort of thing. And it's just so much fun. It loves the 90s. There's a lot of like references to album covers, like the Weezer Blue album. There's a point where there's a montage with some Spice Girls lyrics. I just loved everything about this. There's even my favorite thing that books sometimes have, which is in the back, there is a playlist you could put together to really get in the vibe. So, I mean, if you're looking for a fun, kind of dorky, weird little graphic novel that's just so loves the 90s, I can't recommend this. I know Dunkaroos are back, so get Dunkaroos and read Heavy Vinyl.
Thanks, Lindsay. You actually had me at 90s and Spice Girls, so I'm definitely going to check this out. I hadn't heard of it either. So, what do you think I'm just thinking I'm down the street from Amoeba Music, and that's what came to mind when I was reading over what your book is about. So are there any parallels to sort of the vibe there?
I'd say maybe a smaller shop than Amoeba, something more if you know Freak Beat Records over in Sherman Oaks, or Fingerprints maybe in Long Beach, something like that.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks, Vincy.
You're welcome.
All right, we have Emily back.
Hello, glad to be back. Also, I just want to say Vincy also sold me on Heavy Vinyl, so I'm going to be putting that in my on hold for myself. Anyways, I'm here to talk about another graphic novel. This is a manga. It's similar to Genderqueer in that it's a graphic memoir, and it's also very informative about gender. It is called The Bride Was a Boy, and it's by the artist Chi. Chi, who calls herself Bride-chan in this manga, was born as a male, but knew very early on that she did not feel comfortable in the male body. And so as an adult, she started to present as a woman, meaning she dressed in women's clothes, grew her hair out long, and had others address her with she, her pronouns. And at a certain point, she decides that she would like to fully transition and wants to go ahead with sexual reassignment surgery. And around the same time, she meets Husband-kun, who is the love of her life. So this memoir is so great because it's not only informative about, transition from male to female, it's also a super cute love story. It's so adorable. So Husband-kun is always super supportive of Bride-chan throughout the whole process of her transition. And it's just so lovely to see. And I love that, I'll show you, I have it here. I love that she also breaks up the chapters with little factoids about the LGBTQIA community and trans life. So let's see. One. So yeah, she comments a lot on stereotypes or kind of rude questions that people ask, but they don't think are rude. So she wants to kind of educate you on what's really going on. She has this question: you turned into a woman because you like men? And of course, that's not the case. And she says, I think it's not about liking men, but rather that I wanted to be the woman that I am. And she, then she goes on to say how gender and sexuality are different things. And it's just very, it's very informative for someone who has no knowledge of, the transition process, but also just very cute for anyone who wants a really good love story. It also takes place in Japan. It was originally published in Japan in Japanese, and then was translated to English. So it takes place in Japan, and it's very informative about being trans or a member of the queer community in East Asia and the different laws that affect them there. So that was really interesting for me to read as well. Overall, just super adorable, super cute, and just a really great book. I don't read manga a lot, but this was it was great. So highly recommend.
Thanks, Emily. I had a quick question for you, and that is, what ages would you say this is appropriate for? Because from the way you described it, it could be either or. So
yeah, I think Genderqueer, the first novel I talked about, that's definitely older. So because that has some graphic imagery that would be maybe a little bit better for older readers. This one I think could be much younger because it's very, very adorable, and it's the style is very cute and I can't get over how cute it is. And it doesn't really get into like it's I don't know, it's written in a way that's like very simple and easy to understand, like the whole process of everything. So yeah, I say it could definitely go for like middle grade.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Emily.
Yeah.
All right, next up we have Lear making her second appearance.
Hello, and now the last two books are on my to be read pile as well. Thank you. My other recommendation is a second volume of short stories. The first volume, edited by Sandra Mitchell, is entitled All Out: The No Longer Secret Stories of Queer Teens Throughout the Ages. And the second and newest volume you see here is also edited by Mitchell, and it's called Out Now, Queer We Go Again. 17 short stories, by what surely are some of your favorite YA authors. There's Caleb Rawrig's What Happens in the Closet, which delves us into a high school where our main character might have a crush on a boy who might or might not be his enemy. He'll find out which it is as they're fleeing from vampires. Lumber Me Mine by C.B. Lee is about a girl getting over breaking up with her girlfriend and discovering someone new in a class she thought she'd never take. Refresh by Mark Oshiro is about online dating and how one presents themselves and how that can result in a good or bad first date. Victory Lap by Julian Winters is an achingly sweet story about a boy, his dad, and a newfound crush. And Floating by Tanya Batheju, a unique story about a special teen who needs to keep moving, literally, to feel like herself and to feel calm. But what happens when another one tries to understand her? These and even more beautiful short stories are waiting to be read by you. Thank you.
Thanks, Lear. I guess I'm wondering how long are each of the stories roughly?
They vary in both of the books. So like some of them may be like 5-10 pages, some of them may be 20, but they're pretty quick reads. And like I always tell the teens, like if you don't like something after one chapter or maybe 5 pages, skip to the next one. And that's the joy of short stories.
Yeah, thanks so much, Lear.
Thank
you. All right, last but not least, we have Vinci.
Hello again. So for my other one, I have a manga, Our Dreams at Dusk, and this is a heavier book than the last one I talked about. It's about high schooler Tetsuku Kaname, new student in town, and right from the get-go, he's worried that he's been outed as gay, and he's really distraught, can't figure out what he's going to do, and while trying to contemplate that, he sees what appears to be a woman just like walk off this hillside into thin air, and trying to follow her and where she might have fallen down. He finds this cafe that's like a drop-in cafe for like the LGBTQIA community, and learns more about himself and about just like the queer community and how they function in a city and like a society that really doesn't want to acknowledge them. And like I said, it's a bit heavier. There's like, some content warnings because it does deal with a lot of like loss and some bullying and other subjects. But I love that the art goes between these very detailed drawings, and then also you'll get these beautiful pages where it's just these raw emotions conveyed through more abstract art. And it's about, I think, 4 or 5 volumes. It's already finished, so you could grab just all of it in one sitting. But I highly recommend it.
Thanks, and see, this actually sounds like something I could have used when I was younger, so I'm glad that it's available for teens now.
Yeah, it's definitely, like I said, it's a lot more serious, but I also kind of like that it takes that perspective and there's representation from all across the like queer community.
All right, very nice. Thanks, Vinci. All right, so please join us next month for Teen Book Bites on Monday, July 26th, where we will share some summer romance titles. Thank you to all of our librarians for sharing the books with us today, and thank you for watching.